The Liberal leadership race just got a little tighter and a little smaller as Nova Scotia MP Jaime Batiste says he is bowing out of the contest, which means these are now the 5 candidates still in the running. And today, one of them gave us a better sense of her policies. Karina Gould says she'd cut the GST from 5% to 4% for 1 year to give people a break. She'd also raise the corporate tax rate from 15% to 17% for businesses that make more than $500 million annually. And Gould promised to give more teeth to the Competition Bureau. But it's still going to be a while before those policies can be tested on the debate stage. Today, the Liberal Party announced that there will be 1 English and 1 French debate, but they won't happen until sometime after February 17th. I spoke to Liberal leadership candidate Karina Gould just before CBC News learned that Batiste was dropping out of this race. Ms. Gould, welcome back to the show. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
I want to get your reaction to the latest from Donald Trump. He was asked again today in the Oval Office about tariffs. He said, yep, they're coming on Saturday on the 1st against Canada and Mexico because of fentanyl and other issues. He'll decide tonight whether or not oil is included in those tariffs. What is your reaction to the latest from President Trump?
Well, look, I'm not surprised. I mean, he's been talking about this for a while. I think it's very unfortunate that he's deciding to go in this direction because obviously Canada and the United States have a very deep and long relationship. But I guess my message to Canadians on this is obviously this is a moment of deep anxiety, but I think it's really important that we remain calm, we remain united, and we remain very thoughtful in our response. I know that the government is working on this and they're prepared to respond. I know that premiers across this country are working on this and they're prepared to respond, and that we have the best minds in Canada who are all on this together. And so I think the really important thing for all of us is to remain calm, even with the chaos that we're seeing south of the border.
Does this suggest to you, though, that all of the efforts on strengthening the border, and which was the central demand to avoid these tariffs, it just hasn't worked? Because here we are 48 hours away, less than that, and he says he's going ahead.
Well, this is kind of typical of President Trump. I mean, he might say one thing and do another. I mean, we know that his negotiating style is to try to create fear, try to create chaos, and have people be afraid. And I think what we have to demonstrate is that we're not afraid. We are actually very resolute in our confidence in who we are and what we represent for the United States. You know, I heard him earlier saying that he doesn't need any of the things that Canada has because the U.S. has them.
Right.
Well, guess what? They do need us, and they need a lot of the stuff that we send them. And so this is actually going to hurt Americans and U.S. industry just as much as, if not more. And I think what we have to demonstrate is that they do rely on us. And we don't want to have this trade dispute with them, but we know how to fight it, and we also know how to win. And I have full confidence that Canada will come out victorious.
Okay, whatever he does on Saturday and beyond, I think it's safe to say that the president will be a disruptive force in our policy and in the Canadian economy. And today, one of the policies you're pitching is raising the corporate income tax rate from 15% to 17% for companies that make more than $500 million. Trump is promising tax cuts, deregulation. Aren't you going to make the country less competitive with the U.S., especially if he makes good on tariffs and reorienting the trade relationship?
Well, I think that this is something that's really important for our economy in general. I also propose that for 1 year, and I think in light of the experience that we might have with the trade dispute for the United States, that I'm going to cut the GST down to 4% for 1 year to help Canadians make ends meet, save hundreds of dollars a year on the GST reduction, and ask companies, our wealthiest companies that make over $500 million a year, to increase their corporate taxes by 2%. It's still lower than the federal corporate tax rate in the United States. And then I also talked about creating a more competitive economy. We need to seriously rethink competition in this country to give Canadians the freedom to make the choices that they want to make as consumers, but also to reduce our prices. And I think that we also need to have a real discussion with business leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs in this country about how we make Canada the best place to start and grow a business.
Okay, I do want to talk about the GST cut in just a second, but on the tax side, there's productivity challenges in this country. I don't know if you're going to hear anyone in corporate Canada say what we need right now is an increase in the tax rate, even for the biggest companies, especially with the disruptive threats from the U.S., because they may cut taxes and deregulation in a big way that makes it more enticing for them.
Well, for those really big companies, I mean, we're talking about companies like Loblaws. They're not innovating in the economy right now. They're not creating the kind of wealth amongst Canadians that we could be doing, that we know that small and medium-sized businesses are doing. You know, we need to create an environment where innovation and entrepreneurship is what we're looking for. And I think there's a huge huge opportunity for us. I mean, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's technology, how we apply that across different sectors for us to really attract and retain good businesses here. But the companies that I'm talking about, you know, the Loblaws of the world, they're the ones that...
This would be Shopify, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
This would be some of the big tech companies who are not fans of this sort of policy in this government and have mused openly as they sort of side up with Mr. Polyev about relocation and different things like that.
Yeah, but if you're making over $500 million a year in profit, you can afford to pay 2% more in taxes to help the Canadian economy writ large. But it's those smaller businesses that we want to see scale up and grow in our country, and I'm excited about the possibility there.
Okay, so on the GST cut, this is a temporary one-year thing, though temporary tax cuts are hard to bring back once you give it to people. But this is $11 billion, right? So it's a lot of money with a deficit that is already brushing up against the upper limits of what the government was willing to spend. That's $11 billion you wouldn't have for an aid package for people affected by tariffs or to offer targeted relief or just to offset whatever damage comes from Donald Trump. So why is a broad-based consumption tax cut a better way of using your fiscal firepower?
Because what we hear from Canadians across the country and what we've been hearing for a couple of years is that times are tough right now and they need help getting by. And this is a direct way that the federal government can have an actual impact for Canadians of all income levels to have that break. And, you know, it could be up to $700 a year. That is meaningful for Canadians. And so it is one way to demonstrate that we've heard them on affordability to deliver that. And when it comes to, you know, a broader aid package, I mean, we're talking about potentially COVID level response when it comes to these tariffs. I mean, it could be up to 1 million jobs in Canada. And so we have to be prepared to shore up Canadians, to bridge them through this period of time, but also to support businesses. Because as I said, I'm fully confident that we will come out victorious on the other side of this trade dispute, but we need to make sure that Canadians make it through in terms of their incomes, but also that those jobs are there when we do come out victorious. So we need to make sure that we are having a solid response in terms of our economic response, in terms of our diplomatic response, in terms of our tariff response to the United States, but we also have to protect Canadians and their jobs and our businesses.
In a resignation letter from Cabinet, Chrystia Freeland said the government should keep its financial powder dry to deal with the U.S. and avoid costly political gimmicks like a GST holiday for the Christmas holidays. I mean, how does this differ from that one?
I don't think this is a gimmick. I think this is real for people. And certainly when I hear from folks about how hard it is to buy groceries, when I hear about how hard it is for them to get clothes for their kids, this will actually make a meaningful difference for them. So at the end of the day, I'm listening to what Canadians and Canadian families are telling me, and that's why I'm responding in a way that would actually make a difference for them.
Okay, we're into this race past the point where candidates are approved as qualified candidates. Still, the Elections Canada vetting process is happening. We heard from the party today there will be 2 debates, one in English, one in French. We don't know where, we don't know when, only it'll be after February 17th, so after the Family Day holiday. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, Mark Carney is perceived as the front runner here. He's getting a lot of endorsements without a policy plan, without a debate, and without, quite frankly, many media interviews to explain his situation. Do you think this is a process that gives someone who's probably got to catch up to that guy a fair shot here?
Well, look, I'm all for debates, and I'm not afraid of debates either. But what I can say is I think that the Liberal Party membership, and I think Canadians, deserve to hear from all of us as candidates. They deserve to hear what ideas we're putting forward. I made big announcements today about what I would do as Prime Minister on the affordability side, on competitiveness in competition in our economy. And we need to hear from everybody. So, you know, I'm all for the party doing more debates and to doing them sooner as well. I don't think any of us should be worried about having a debate. I think we should all be excited about that because not only is this good for the party membership, but it's also practice for the general election. I mean, whoever wins the leadership, I hope it's me, is going to have to go up against other party leaders who've been debating for years. And so this is only a way for us to get better. It's only a way for us to share our ideas with Canadians and to have a conversation and a dialogue. That's what democracy is about. And I would hope that we would have more, and I would hope we have them sooner.
Right, but so you want 4, right?
Yeah.
I believe, and this is what Chrystia Freeland said, she wants 4. It's 2, and it's coming later in the campaign. I mean, what does that do to the competitive integrity of the race?
Well, What I think, David, is that we don't need a coronation. I think Liberals need to have a debate. I think it only helps our party if we're having a dialogue about what our visions are for the future of our party and for the future of our country. And I think that's what Liberal members deserve, and I think that's what Canadians deserve as well.
Okay, one last question for you. Chandra Arya was disqualified. We do not know why. Nobody has said why he was not approved to run in this race. He still sits in the Liberal caucus, and as far as we know, is greenlit to run for the party in the next election, even if he's not greenlit to run as leader. Should there be an explanation to the public as to why? Because this is confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. That's not something that has been disclosed to me, and that's kind of up to the party to decide. There are lots of reasons for why that could be, some of which might be more personal in nature and maybe don't need to be disclosed. So I would leave that as a question for the party itself or for Mr. Arya, but that's not something that I know about or would feel comfortable.
But you know, voters here in Nepean, if he's not greenlit to run for leader, but is greenlit to run for the party, there is a contradiction there.
It's a question, I think, for the party because I don't actually know what the answer is.
But you don't think they need to clear it up? You just leave it to their judgments?
Again, there's many reasons for what it might be, and it might be in terms of meeting certain requirements, but we don't know the answer to that, so that's up to them to decide.
Okay, Karina Gould, Liberal leadership candidate. Appreciate the time. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.